Learn to be calm, and you will always be happy. Paramahansa Yogananda. Calmness is not a feeble silence before the storm, but the ability to stand firm amid the raging whirlwind of emotions, where anger, anxiety, and fear no longer hold the power to manipulate us like unconscious puppets. When a person has not yet mastered calmness, they resemble a lake violently churned, where every reflected image becomes distorted and chaotic. But when the mind settles, life suddenly becomes transparent, profound, and far easier to understand than ever before. Calmness is an inner state of self-mastery, where reason and emotion achieve a delicate, graceful balance. It does not erase emotions, but allows us to observe them like someone standing on the riverbank watching the water flow by, rather than being swept away in the turbulent current. That very distance opens the door to true freedom. The freedom to choose our response, the freedom not to be controlled by circumstances. And from there, happiness is no longer a fragile thing dependent on the outside world, but becomes an inner source of strength, enduring and quietly radiant. Every event in life is like a stone thrown into the water. If the mind is already turbulent, even a small stone can stir up waves of chaos. But if you know how to keep the lake of your inner self always still, every impact will quickly dissipate, leaving no trace. That is the true art of living, not avoiding the storms, but mastering how we respond to them. Once you possess calmness, you no longer rush to judge, nor are you dragged along by fleeting stimuli. You live more slowly but more deeply, with less but more fully. And in that state, happiness is no longer a distant goal, but transforms into a gentle flow, weaving through every peaceful moment of the present, enduring and full of meaning. I have never learned anything from anyone who agreed with me throughout my life. Dudley Field Malone. Superficial agreement seems like a sign of correctness. But in reality, agreement is merely a monotonous reflection, while disagreement is the friction that creates the brilliant light of insight. When someone agrees with us, the mind is like a closed room where every sound echoes back only itself. Nothing new is born, no horizons are expanded. People often seek confirmation, a deep-seated need to protect the ego from feelings of insecurity. Yet that very need unwittingly traps us in a narrow, safe zone of perception. By only listening to voices of agreement, we are building a pre-filtered world where everything is right as we wish it to be, but impoverished and distorted. On the contrary, disagreement, even if sometimes uncomfortable, is like a cold wind blowing through the mind, forcing us to awaken and re-examine beliefs that seemed so solid. Intelligence is like a sharp sword. Without friction, it will remain dull and useless. Only through collision, through being tested, does it become keen and powerful. Those who disagree with you are precious sharpening stones. They do not bring comfort, but they make you grow. They compel you to explain more clearly, think more deeply, and sometimes bravely admit that you were wrong. Instead of avoiding disagreement, learn to embrace it as an uncomfortable yet invaluable gift. For it is precisely in those moments of challenge, when the ego trembles and assumptions are overturned, that people truly learn. And when you are calm enough to listen to opposing views without defending yourself, you not only expand your intelligence, but also touch a higher freedom. Freedom from the limitations of your own self. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Albert Einstein. Intelligence is not about knowing a lot, remembering well, or always being right. In truth, intelligence lies in how quickly you are willing to abandon a belief once you realize it is no longer correct. It is a form of inner flexibility, soft yet strong, like water, not stubbornly holding its shape but always finding its own path. The ability to change requires something not everyone possesses: the courage to face the fact that I was wrong. The human ego loves stability, loves the feeling of control and being right. Each time we change our thinking, it is as if we are dismantling a part of our own identity. That is why many people choose to cling to outdated beliefs, even though they are obsolete, not because they lack intelligence, but because they fear losing that familiar sense of security. But true intelligence lies in the ability to live in a state of incompleteness. An intelligent person does not see knowledge as the final destination, but as a constantly evolving flow. They do not build their mind like a fortified castle, but like a thriving garden, where old ideas can be uprooted to make way for new seeds. And it is this continuous change that creates the wondrous depth of perception. The mind is like a living map. If you never update it, you will soon lose your way in a world that is always changing. But if you are willing to redraw, edit, or even erase old lines, you will always maintain a clear direction. Change, therefore, is not a sign of inconsistency, but a radiant expression of growth. When a person learns to change without losing themselves, they attain a rare form of intellectual freedom. They are no longer bound by their own past, no longer trapped in outdated definitions. And in that state, intelligence is no longer something to prove, but becomes a vibrant flow of movement, flexible, alert, and always moving forward. One undeniable truth is that the less one has to do, the less time one has to do it. Count Chesterfield. When life is empty of obligations, we imagine we will be freer, but in reality, it is like a boat without a compass in the vast ocean. No pressure, no direction, ultimately, just drifting in endless procrastination. Time is not an objective entity, but a subjective experience distorted by motivation and meaning. When people have many things to do, the mind automatically organizes, prioritizes, and acts like a machine activated by pressure. On the contrary, when there is nothing to drive it, the brain falls into a state of stagnation, where everything can be done later, and that very can becomes an invisible trap. Time does not disappear. It disintegrates into fragments of distraction, slipping by unconsciously without leaving a mark. A completely free day, no deadlines, no responsibilities, no limits. At first, it feels like an open field full of promise. But without goals, that field quickly turns into a desert where you walk endlessly without knowing where you are going. On the other hand, when a day is filled with clear tasks, each moment becomes sharp, structured, and rhythmic. Selective busyness does not take away time but gives it a vibrant shape. People do not lack time. They lack structure for their time. When we proactively create a framework, whether goals, habits, or responsibilities, we are shaping time into something graspable. And paradoxically, it is within those very limits that we feel freer and more effective than ever. The issue is not how much time we have, but how we treat it. When you have little to do but take no action, time melts away uselessly. But when you focus, even if busy, you still feel in control of every moment. And that is the art of living, not finding more time, but giving time a meaning strong enough that you do not want to waste it. We all must endure one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret and disappointment. Jim Rohn. Pain is not something that can be avoided, but something we have the right to choose. One side is meaningful pain, lingering, disciplined, sometimes harsh like hammer blows forging steel. The other is hollow pain, prolonged, persistent, gnawing at the mind like a wound that never heals. People often avoid immediate difficulties to seek instant comfort. But that very choice quietly accumulates another form of pain, deeper and more toxic, regret. The pain of discipline, though harsh, still carries the structure of hope. It is like climbing a hill. Each step is heavy, but every step takes us higher. In contrast, the pain of disappointment has no movement. It is standing still in the realization that I could have done differently, a form of endless self-questioning with no escape. Two paths lie before us. One is rough, steep, forcing you to strain, sweat, and even doubt yourself. The other is flat, easy, requiring no effort. But at the end of the journey, the easy path leads to a vast emptiness, where you look back and realize you have gone nowhere. Meanwhile, the difficult path, though full of scratches, opens up a broad vista, where you not only achieve something, but also become a better version of yourself. The pain of discipline is an investment, while the pain of regret is the price paid. One consumes energy to build, the other consumes the mind to lament. And what is worth noting is that the first pain has limits. It ends when you grow. The second pain can last forever because it exists in memory. The choice is not to have pain or not, but which kind of pain. When you consciously accept difficulty, you are giving yourself a chance to transform pain into strength. And in that transformation, you not only avoid regret, you also touch a deeper happiness, the happiness of knowing you have not betrayed your own potential. Then one day, remaining forever closed in the bud causes more pain than blooming. the inevitable moment of growth for every human being. At first, being closed is like a safe cocoon, where we take shelter from hurt, from judgmental eyes, from the risks of the world. There, we feel protected, kept intact. But that very intactness over time becomes a subtle and suffocating imprisonment. People often equate safety with immobility. We hesitate to change, to step out, because blooming means having to face failure, to face hurt, to face the possibility of not being accepted. But what we rarely realize is that suppressed potential also causes its own form of pain, quiet but persistent. It is like energy compressed tightly, growing increasingly tense and uncomfortable until the very suppression becomes an unbearable burden. A flower bud kept forever in an unbloomed state. At first, it remains beautiful, still whole. But as time passes, instead of unfolding, it begins to wither right within its own enclosure. Not because the outside world is too harsh, but because it has gone against its own nature. Humans are the same. When we dare not live, dare not express, dare not change, we do not avoid pain, we only postpone it and make it more profound. When the pain of not living becomes greater than the fear of beginning to live, that is the moment we are forced to choose. Either continue shrinking in an increasingly narrow comfort zone or accept blooming, even knowing the petals will face wind, rain, and the risk of fading. Only when we bloom do we truly live fully in accordance with our nature. Though fragile, though risky, that is the only state where we no longer betray ourselves. And in that moment, pain does not disappear, but it transforms from suffocating suppression into a meaningful unfolding. That is not just pain, but life truly unfolding. Life contracts or expands in direct proportion to each person's courage. Life in itself is neither small nor large. It is the level of our courage that determines its boundaries. A fearful person lives in a contracted space where every choice is limited by what-ifs and if-onlys. Conversely, a person who dares to step beyond fear sees life as doors continuously opening, each step a new horizon. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Fear is like a thick fog, making us believe the outside world is full of risks and uncontrollable. When we retreat, that fog thickens further, distorting perception and shrinking our living space. But when we advance, step by step, the fog begins to dissipate, not because the world becomes safer, but because we become strong enough to face it. Life is like a room with movable walls. With each choice of safety, the walls move closer, making the living space narrower. But with each courageous action, no matter how small, the walls recede, expanding space for experiences, opportunities for your very self. What is noteworthy is that these walls are not erected by circumstances, but controlled by the fear within us. The more you dare to face risks, the less threatened you feel by life. Because courage not only changes circumstances, but also restructures how you see yourself. You are no longer the one who avoids, but become the one who initiates. And in that transformation, life not only expands in experience, but also deepens in meaning. The true limits of life do not lie in circumstances, but in the threshold of courage we are willing to reach. When you dare to cross the boundary of fear, you not only expand the outer world, you are expanding yourself. And in that space, life is no longer something that happens to you, but something you are truly living. Worry does not make tomorrow any less sad. It only robs today of its strength. The way people unknowingly deplete themselves, worry often disguises itself as a form of preparation, as if by thinking more we can control the future. But in essence, it is like sitting in the imagined darkness of a storm instead of lighting a lamp to see the present clearly. Worry is a projection. The mind pulls us out of the present moment and hurls us into a future that does not yet exist, where every negative possibility is magnified. The irony is that while we try to minimize the pain of tomorrow, we unwittingly lose the only resource that can truly help us face it, the power of today. Like someone pouring water into an imaginary desert while the real water bottle in their hand gradually empties. Your mental energy is like a warm flame. When you focus on the present, that flame burns steadily, enough to illuminate and warm. But when worry pulls you into the future, the flame is split, flickering weakly in many directions until it no longer has the strength to light anything. Tomorrow does not become lighter, but today is left exhausted. The future cannot be solved in advance. It can only be prepared through the present. Every clear action, every sober decision today is the only way to lighten the burden of tomorrow. Worry is not action, but procrastination disguised as thinking. From thinking about the problem to doing what can be done. They do not deny fear, but do not let it take control. And in that transformation, they reclaim what is most important, the power of the present. Because ultimately, it is not tomorrow that determines whether you are strong or weak, but how you live today that shapes every tomorrow to come. Everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Always be kind. Each individual is a private world where cracks are often hidden behind a normal appearance. We see smiles, composure, or even roughness in others, but rarely see the silent battles taking place inside them. And precisely because we do not see, we easily judge, easily react, forgetting that behind every behavior is an untold story. The tendency to center our own experiences makes us unconsciously assume that others' inner worlds are as simple and clear as what they show. But in reality, everyone carries their own burdens, worries, memories, wounds, pressures, all operating in silence. Some fight to stay calm, some struggle not to collapse, some are just trying to get through the day. And because those battles have no sound, we often underestimate their intensity. Each person is like an iceberg. The visible part, words, actions, attitude, is only a small portion. The submerged part, containing the inner struggles and efforts, is the true mass. When we collide with someone, we often react only to the visible part, forgetting that below is a complex structure. And sometimes just one careless word can touch vulnerabilities we know nothing about. In that context, kindness is no longer a simple moral choice, but becomes a profound form of emotional intelligence. It is the ability to interact with others with caution and understanding, even when we do not know what they are going through. Kindness does not make the world perfect, but reduces unnecessary hurts that could have been avoided. When you choose kindness, you not only help others lighten their burden a little, but you also reshape yourself. You become a safe space in this world full of collisions. And in that quiet spreading, kindness is not just an action. It is the way you exist among people who are also silently fighting like you. There is no greater pain than carrying an untold story within. Maya Angelou. The need to express, to be understood, to exist fully in the gaze of others. When a story is held back, it does not disappear, it quietly accumulates, like invisible pressure in the chest, growing heavier with time. It is not just memory, but a part of the self that has not been released. The inability or unwillingness to tell one's story often stems from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of disbelief, fear of being hurt once more. People choose silence, thinking silence is a way to protect themselves. But prolonged silence actually becomes a form of self-isolation. A suppressed story does not stay still. It seeps into thoughts, influences emotions, and sometimes shapes the way we perceive the world. The mind is like a sealed room filled with unspoken words. Each untold story is a locked door. Over time, the air in the room becomes stifling, not because there is too much, but because nothing is liberated. When a door is opened, when we dare to speak, to share, the space immediately changes. Not all pain disappears, but it is placed outside where we can see it, understand it, and gradually let it go. Telling one's story is not only an act of release, but also a way to restructure the experience. When we put it into words, we arrange the scattered memory fragments into a meaningful flow. We are no longer victims swept along by the past, but become the storyteller, the one with the right to redefine what happened. The greatest pain is not what happened, but what is kept inside with no way out. When a person finds the courage to tell their story, even to just one person or even to themselves, they not only free the memory, but also free themselves. And in that moment, pain is no longer a silent burden, but becomes part of a journey that is understood and healed.